One of the parts I found interesting in Brain Trust is this sort of recurring, it seemed like a scene that recurred again and again and again, where some authority with the state would go and investigate the cow mutilation, be like, it's a predator, see ya.
Right.
And have, do you think that, and this could just be your opinion based on all the time you spent down up there doing that. Um, do you think they knew better?
This is a pretty complex, it's a pretty complex research program, and I think some people may have known better. I think the people who may have contracted this small outfit to do some food source sampling throughout the western part of the United States may have known better. But the vast majority of the people who were working at the state level, sort of who were aligned with the CDC or the USDA, I really don't think that those people were privy to what was going on. I think it was kind of like they didn't have the full picture, and there was too many separate data points in different areas. I don't think necessarily people had the full picture. And the other thing is, I've worked with a lot of state governments, but particularly federal government in the last 25 years, including Department of Defense, and NASA and other organizations and multiple departments in the Department of Defense. And so what some people may ascribe to, some kind of a conspiracy, I think usually can be explained by people making mistakes or some sort of incompetence going on. I would tend to put that out as the first explanation, as opposed to some kind of organized cabal doing something nefarious. Because again and again, I've seen these sort of mistakes being made. People get transferred out of departments, and all of their expertise goes with them, and this new person has no idea what to do, and this whole thing that happens with incredible regularity in the federal government.
I would agree with that. When I was in my early 20s, before I moved to New York, I used to be a conspiracy theorist. And then I came here and I started meeting people, and I changed my mind. Once you start having dinner with
Yeah,
congressmen, you realize nobody can keep a secret.
exactly. And yeah,
So the business, there's the business as usual mutilations, and then there's the other ones. Can you talk about the other ones?
the other ones, I'll give you an example of the other ones. We there was a ranch in northeastern Utah, which has since become known as Skinwalker Ranch. That National Institute for Discovery Science was kind of, it owned the property, and it was like a living laboratory, because one of the reasons the property was purchased was that this property had a history of cattle mutilations going back into the 60s and 50s. So the property was purchased, and there was a herd of cattle on the property. And so we had surveillance on the property. We had sensors on the property to detect anything weird. But I was sitting in Las Vegas in 1990, it was 1997, when we got a call from the ranch manager of Skinwalker Ranch saying that one of their calves had gone down, and they had just found it. And the weird thing it was, this was calving season. It was March of 1997. All these newborn calves were, getting born around the property. And the rancher and his wife, the ranch manager and his wife, had gone through the process of putting ear tags, these bright yellow plastic ear tags on the cattle, on the calves after they've been born. So this was happening, but sort of 10 o'clock in the morning, they had just tagged this newborn calf. It weighed about 84 pounds, and they had walked about 100 yards down to the next one where they were proceeding to tag the next one, when the dog next to them started freaking out. And, you know, and it was obviously focused on where they had just come, you know, from before. So they went back to figure out what was going on, and they found this calf that they had tagged like 45 minutes earlier. And this was like 10 o'clock in the morning, bright sunny morning in March. And they found the calf completely spread eagled on the ground. All of its internal organs were gone. It was open as if it had been sort of spread eagled and carefully spread on the ground. And the really spooky part of this thing was that there was not a drop of blood on the animal, in the animal. So it's not like a coyote came out from the tree line and attacked the calf. This calf had been completely stripped of all internal organs. And so I got a call when I was in Las Vegas, and we had our veterinarian on staff, and we had a couple of people. So luckily, Robert Bigelow had a private jet. So we jumped on the private jet. We were standing over the animal about 2.5, 3 hours after the call. And I mean, this was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. I mean, this calf was lying on its back in the pasture, all four legs sort of spread eagled. And the flesh was pink. The ribs were just jutting up. All of the hide had been cut away. And like the rancher had talked to us, there was not a drop of blood on the animal. So we actually did this experiment to see if maybe a whole bunch of blood had sort of seeped from the animal onto the ground and, disappeared that way. So we actually did that experiment, went to the local slaughterhouse, got a couple of liters of blood and poured it on the grass in different locations and photographed it over time. Fact is, if any of that blood had been spilled from the calf, it would have stained the grass, badly. But, this animal in broad daylight with the two people, no more than sort of 100 yards, maybe 150 yards away, they never heard anything. They never saw anything. The only thing that alerted them was their dog went crazy at this particular time and alerted them that something was happening over there. But this happened essentially in broad daylight under their noses. So that's an example of the kind of spooky, sort of quote unquote paranormal associated, because we actually got a professional tracker to start looking around the animal, and he kind of quartered the area for several days, looking for tracks, looking for any tracks of any perpetrators that could have done this. We had all of these gaming exercises. We war gamed the whole thing of, a group of special forces people that, had broken cover from the fence line and done it. But the fact is, there were no tracks. There was no blood at all. There was no sign of the organs. And this animal, the yellow, bright yellow ear tag from the ear of the animal had been really cleanly sliced off by what looked like a scalpel, very, very cleanly. So this was not a coyote attack. It was not somebody or something had done this with using sharp instruments. So we took a necropsy of the animal. We sampled the animal, and from two independent labs, we got forensically, we got that sharp instruments had definitively been used on this animal. And it was not sort of a predator attack. It was not a coyote attack. So that was an example of the kind of the spooky, and this was not characteristic of the animals that we investigated.
Your involvement with the ranch pretty much started with the mutilations.
It started with, it was a combination of the cattle mutilations plus a lot of unusual activity, including these quote unquote nuts and bolts UFOs that used to reportedly fly over the property. So that was one of the reasons that the ranch was purchased. It's a 500-acre ranch in northeastern Utah, about 50 miles from the Colorado border. And it's along the Wasatch Front, pretty out of the way place. But that was the reason it was purchased, because of these. We were tasked with investigating all of these anomalies, utilizing the scientific method. I mean, that's the bottom line. We had PhD level scientists on staff. We actually had a science advisory board that were pretty, they held our feet to the fire, and they made sure that nothing that we did was deviated from the scientific method. And these people were sort of world-class scientists from national laboratories, from universities. We actually had two astronauts who had walked on the moon on the board of National Institute for Discovery Science. That's like Harrison Schmitt and Edgar Mitchell. So 2 out of the 12 people in history that have walked on the moon, they were part of our National Institute for Discovery Science Advisory Board. So it was a pretty prestigious board, and they were not into sloppiness or methodology that was outside the scientific method. So I mean, I think it was a good thing because it really kept us really focused on trying to apply the scientific method to these anomalies. But one of the problems was we were constantly 1 foot behind. Whatever was doing this, we were always behind the curve.